Welcome everyone to this week's StockWaves webinar. We're going to spend the beginning portion of this webinar taking a look at the stocks from our StockWaves 300 list that are either very close to reaching initial target support or have already reached initial target support. So these are candidates that look like they are potentially more immediate buys or entries, and some of them even we've posted that we have already taken a position, an initial position in some of these. So kind of the mix between our list as far as stocks go, we have about a third of them that look like they're still searching for just reached a top in their respective wave one or whatever it is off of the March low, and still are, you know, in the very early stages or haven't even started a corrective pullback as a wave two or B wave, whatever it is in that case. Then we have a good group of charts that saw an initial move down from the June high and have been bouncing correctively since in what looks like an A-B start to that corrective pullback. Set up now for a C wave down to finish into target region support. Then we have the group that we're going to look at today, which looks like they've already entered into target support as at the very least, an A wave down, and in some cases, potentially all of a wave two or B wave complete off of whatever the respective high was. So there is a bit of a mix as far as where these stocks are currently positioned. It's definitely a lot more variation as far as how things are aligned than, say, what things looked like when they were coming up off of the March low or the initial 1-2 start back in April. So at that point, many things were, pretty much all aligned at the same point. Now we're seeing a lot of deviation as far as where these respective counts are. So let's go ahead and
I
take a
think
look.
it's
Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's a great advantage that we have in stock waves, particularly now that we're seeing a lot more divergence and kind of separating off into a few different camps, that it gives us a lot of opportunities for rotation. So we can trim profits on some of those things that are finally getting that fifth wave up or those extensions into the top of one. And we want to lighten up because it looks like they're still due for a good chunk of the wave two. But we're still very bullish this market, and there's some things that have hit that hit a 382 retrace and took off, and so we want to have some exposure on the long side, and I know that with the market, it's kind of, you have to be on or off. I mean, you can parse things out by different time frames, and you can have long-term exposure long and have short-term exposure on the short side, but for the most part, you're either long or short the market. With stock waves, we can really diversify, and we can say, here's all the things that we're looking for a retrace in. We also looked at some short ideas, and here's the cash that we have allocated at these targets for these buys, and here's some things that are at support. But we can keep in mind the broader risk that the majority of things look like they need to retrace more, and the market fits in with the majority of those things. So if it does have a couple of really bad days coming up over the next couple of weeks, as it does try and get more of that wave two started, or all of it, in a quicker burst, most things are going to probably get hit on those days. So that's important to be aware of when you're sizing positions and recognizing the broader context. And we say each chart on its own, and we want to have that ability to diversify, but we also want to keep in mind, the broader market risk when we see that's prudent at times.
Right, and we've discussed this before, but in most cases, when we build a position in something we like, it's not going to be all at once. A lot of times we're going to be entering it in tranches. So even if I post, I took an initial tranche here, that's with the expectation that price can easily, continue lower from there and reach the next levels of support. And usually that's where I have my next limit order to enter the next tranche. So a lot
And
of
I
cases.
think also, I wanted to just quickly address some misconceptions about what Art Garrett's and my intention was with the SW300 list. It was not, these are the list of all of the things that are universally bullish from right here and are going to outperform the market in totality, all of them together. It was more of a, this is the SW300 things might come off of it. We might put new things on, but it is just a more refined index that we're tracking of these are things that have vetted certain criteria from us, that it's worthy that we want to consider to look at them on a regular basis in terms of where they're fitting within their different phases of the sentiment cycle in line with the market. So these are the primary 300 or so names where we want to focus our efforts on keeping track of them for where those opportunities are going to come from, but they're not all going to move in unison. And as we just discussed, a lot of them look like they're really set up for some decent drops. We don't consider a lot of those shorts because a lot of them are setting up for C waves down and wave twos that we want to look at as buys. But the probably 150 to 200 of the names on the list look like they're set up for a good deal more of a wave two retrace.
Right. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the names that we have for today, starting off with ACB. You should be familiar with the majority of these. We discuss them a lot, so I'm not really going to go into larger degree context for most of these. We'll just take a look at most of the hourly charts here. We have that strong move off of the May low, which we're counting as wave one, and then a pullback, which is now entering target support for wave two. So we've hit the top end of the 382. That's where I took my initial tranche as an entry, but no clear evidence of a bottom in place yet. We would, I would say, at the very least, need to get back above the recent high here at 1289 to open the door to that. Otherwise, this still has room to drift lower. Next support would be 1090 as the measured move for wave C in comparison to the size of wave A, and then the 50% retracement at 1021. And I mean, technically, this could even stretch down to the 618 and still be perfectly valid as a wave two. It just seems like if this is the 1, 2, 3, 4 of our diagonal within the C wave, that would be a little bit large for the fifth. So highest probability between the 382 and 50% retracement here. All right, next up, HPI is one that we've been kind of discussing already as a near-term trade setup to the long side. We see this potential leading diagonal up off of the June low, and so far a three-wave pullback, which has kind of tested the 618 retracement twice. It did look like it was trying for a wider flat when we broke marginally below the prior June 29th low here, but the way it's turning back up again, it's once again opening the door to the possibility that all of wave two did hold at the 618 retracement. So what we want to see next is a micro 5 waves up, ideally into this 618 fib here at 1340, hold a corrective consolidation as wave 2 of 3, and from there take out the June high as wave 3 of 3. Until we see that though, I will leave that water flat still for the 2 as the alternative. Moving on to AMX, and Zach, if we're going alphabetically here and there's one that I skipped over that you had, you can just holler and take a look at that.
Okay, only on the backup list.
Okay. For AMX, this is another one that recently posted that I took an entry in when it dipped into the upper end of target support here, the 50% retracement. So we have a nice clean A, B, and then ending diagonal C wave down into the upper end of that support, and what looks like so far an impulsive turn back up. So this is looking very promising so far for a potential 1-2 already in place. Situation where, yes, this could technically be an A wave. We're bouncing a wave B, which if so, should still reach higher, and followed by a C wave for wider flat. But door is open to the start to a wave 3. If that's the case, though, then what we want to see is at least the 382 fib here reached for wave 1 of 3, and maybe even higher than that. If this is a smaller wave 1 of this wave 1, we pull back more in a wave 2, it might actually stretch up to the 618 fib as all of this wave 1. So basically looking good so far, and we can treat it as potential bottom in place as long as the recent low here is holding. Moving on to APHA, similar to ACB, we have a number of cannabis names that seem to be waking up and potentially getting closer to some nice moves to the upside. APHA is actually one that has been holding up stronger than the majority of the larger cap names out there, so it's one that I like for that reason. We've been kind of tracking this one before, and so some of you may already have a position in it, in which case we're just looking for another opportunity to add. But the options that I see here are either 1-2-1-2 already in place, shown in blue, and this is now wave 1 of 3 starting here, in which case ideally followed by wave 2 of 3 consolidation, or the alternative that this is where wave 1 of 3 completed and we need a wider flat shown in red, which can take us back to that June low one more time. The end of June, that low, for that wider flat, and then attempt to head up from there. So in either case, if we get one of these two pullbacks, that would be the next ideal spot to add to the position.
The only other variant that I've mentioned is the potential that it could be ABC up for wave 1 in a bigger leading diagonal.
Right.
And so this B wave could drop deeper, closer to the 320 to 280 region.
Right.
If we do get a pretty hard hit in the market, then that's one that could drop a little bit more. But I do like having, if you're looking at a lot of these, that we've pointed out, we're looking for just a larger wave 1 in the start of a much bigger primary wave 3. So if you're looking at this as early start to confirming an even bigger degree move, then the risk reward, even if it's going to drop back down to the 3 region, is still great, because off of the March low, the primary wave 3, or even just a measured move to a 100%, is at the 54 level at the larger degree. So even a move down towards the 3 region is still allowing for that, is still phenomenal risk reward for maintaining exposure.
Right. And something like CGC, yeah, that's how I would view this. ABC up for a larger wave 1, assuming this is a wave 1 up, and this is going to be an A, B, and then C down. So just a little bit stronger in AHPA, which is why I was leaning a little bit more nested there.
Right.
All right, next up on AXP. AXP, it's still so far only has 3 waves up off of the March low. So as far as, confidently confirming a large degree bottom in place there, it still needs to prove itself a little bit more. But we got the decent pullback off of the June high into the support discussed for a 4th wave. And price so far has turned up from that support in what could be considered a micro 5 waves. So it's not guaranteed that we do fall through from here as a 5th wave, and it could roll over in something more bearish, but at least we have relatively good risk reward with the current setup using a stop underneath the current July low. So there's room, if this is a micro 5 waves up, to consolidate a bit more if it wants. Current 382 to 618 retracement of this current bounce is 94.56 down to 92.63. So pull back into there, short-term buying opportunity, stop below the July low, and see how high this can reach. Moving on to BHF, it came extremely close to hitting that 382 retracement, didn't quite actually hit there, so I didn't get filled on my initial tranche just yet. And, it's one of the situations where it did pull back enough, and we have what looks like a 3-wave decline for that potentially to be all of wave 2. And there's actually a good number of financial charts that look like this. AXP, as you saw, had a similar ABC off of the high and nice turn back up off of the low. So again, just only a 302 retracement right now. This could very easily be an A, B, and C of a wider flat for the wave 2, and we do get into that blue target box and get a little bit more favorable of an entry. So we'll see how the bounce develops. If it is looking very impulsive and then holds another corrective consolidation after that, then we can lean a little bit more bullish and look for an entry a little bit higher. Otherwise, again, I think hopefully the wider flat will give us that setup. Moving on to BIIB. This is actually a chart from the original shopping list. I still like it, and I do like how it has kind of pulled back off of that spike high that we saw at the beginning of the year, because it still so far is holding a corrective looking shape to the pullback. I do want one more local low though still to 245 to attempt that entry, as the bullish interpretation there is the red one too. So if we get one more drop is what will be a fifth of a C into 245, then I'm going to attempt along there. Next up on BJRI, one of the ones that I posted earlier this week that I was going to, or that I took an initial tranche, opened a position in, with price reaching the upper end of our target support, the 382 retracement. So far it's turned up from there, and another situation similar to BHF that it's possible that all of wave 2 here completed. But even if not, there are two kind of options here. This could be an A wave. We get more of a bounce in wave B, and then wave C takes us deeper into the blue target box. One of the alternatives would also be that this is a fourth wave bounce within the C, and we get one more marginally lower low as a fifth, and then it attempts to bottom from there. But any further downside into that blue box is just an opportunity to add to the position. Next up, I think it's worth looking at a lot of the Chinese names that we've been recently tracking, because they have pulled back in most cases into support. In this case, for BZUN, support for a possible fourth wave, assuming an impulse up off of the March low, where the recent high was wave 3 of 3. So price dropped down into that 50% retracement this morning, has turned back up. We'll see if we can get a cleaner start to this fifth wave, in which case should be heading up to around at least 51 as the next potential target.
BMY.
Next up on BMY, this one was actually an entry from earlier in June when it dipped into the upper end of support, suggested an entry for at least a B wave bounce, and it satisfied pretty much exactly the expectation for a B wave bounce into the 618 retracement, and has turned down since. So I'd still hold my position, but I'm actually leaning a little bit more here to the wider flat red, especially if price is holding below the recent high here, where we can come back down into the blue box as a wider flat for that B wave. But I will just use it as an opportunity to add to the position. And CARG. CARG is one of the stocks that actually looks like it's already filled out the A and the B of our wave 2 and is now working on wave C of that too. So under that assumption, it still should reach a little bit lower here. Maybe this is wave 3 of C. We get another 4 and 5 to hopefully take us at least into the upper end of that target support at 22 before attempting a bottom in the wave 2. But this one is one of the closer ones to potentially completing wave 2. Moving on to CBOE, a lot of the exchanges, CME another one. I'll have to look at SPGI. I think ICE it needs a little bit more of a pullback, but a good number of the exchanges are entering into initial support for a possible completed pullback off of the May high, or June high in this case, as a wave 2. So it could easily count as an ABC down already complete, but we don't have much off the low to confirm that. What I would be watching as an alternative, especially if we do end up bouncing more from here, is the same larger A, B, and C. Next up on CI, the pullback that we have off of the June high in this case did also touch the 382 retracement minimum expected target for a corrective pullback as a possible wave 2. The bounce so far off the low looks like only micro 3 waves so far, so I do think we need a little bit more confirmation. And if it does roll back over from here, I would actually move the B wave back to this high and count this as a 1, 2, 3, 4, and another marginally lower low as a wave 5 of C. For either all of wave 2 or a larger A wave. So Another situation though that any further downside into the target region here is just an opportunity to build a position.
CDEV? Oh, you can see CLVS first.
Next up on CLVS, we've been watching this one for a while. We had a potential bottom to wave 2 back here in June, but it just so far, it gave us that corrective flat that held the wave 4 retrace resistance and then turned back down. So looks like an extension of the wave C of 2, and we're now looking at $6 to $5.33 as support for that. So still has an opportunity to push a little bit lower here into that blue box, but that's still the high probability spot for price to attempt to bottom as wave 2. Next up on CDEV, we got a nice dip into the middle of our target region here for the wave 2, tagged a 50% retracement, and is curling back up in what could be a little nano micro 5 waves there. So another good looking, potential either all of wave 2 complete, or at the very least, it looks like an A wave could have easily bottomed there, in which case we should see higher in a B wave bounce. So another situation, especially if you're looking at this as kind of a low risk versus reward setup using a stop underneath the recent low, even for a B wave bounce, the potential there is, very favorable compared to the risk using a stop below that low. So I mentioned CME when we were looking at CBOE, another exchange that has come down into the initial target support for a corrective pullback as a wave 2. Dipped below the 382, hasn't quite tested the 50% yet. I did take an initial position since prices dipped into the upper end of support, but have orders at the 50 and 618 retracement. Need otherwise more confirmation that a bottom is in place. I could view this potentially as a fourth wave within wave C. Otherwise. Let's see, next up I have Crowd. So Crowd was one that we were following as a strong candidate. Initially, this was from the original shopping list, one of the ones that really rocketed strongly off of the March low once the bottom was hit there. And it kind of just kept going. Never really gave us the clearest 1-2 initial start, but with the way it's just continued to subdivide higher, it seems a little bit further along than a lot of other things, with the recent high potentially completing a third wave. So if that's the case and the current pullback is a fourth, then it should be finding support relatively soon. It has room for a little bit lower, and I will expect price to reach a little bit lower, but between 94.69 and 88.33 is kind of the ideal spot for fourth wave pullback here. So if we get a nice ABC, what I would love to see is a bounce here in a B wave of the fourth first. Give us a nice 3-wave corrective shape to this pullback. Kind of like so. And then dip into the target region for that wave C of 4. Next up is Casper. It also potentially has already filled out the A and the B of our pullback here. Is either a wave 2 or a B wave. If that is the case, though, then want to see this continue to drift lower here near term, and at least into the 382 retracement at 650, and that would be the first spot to attempt an entry in the long side. If it instead turns back up immediately higher from here, then I will be watching a wider flat for the B as the alternative. Moving on to CXO, one of the energy names that has already seen a decent sized drop. A lot of them have off of their respective June highs, but this is one of the ones that counted as a nice vibe up into that high, where some other ones were a little bit more questionable as a B wave into that June high. So also looks like a decent, right now, 3-wave pullback into the recent low here is a possible ABC, which can count as complete. Not quite a micro 5 waves up off the low, so we need more confirmation of a bottom, but another situation where we've kind of met minimum expected requirements for that pullback to consider all of wave 2 complete. Moving on to DGLY, which saw a really nice pop today, up almost 50% and a lot more than that at one point earlier today. But we've been tracking this one as a decent setup as it was entering into target support and what looked like a nice ABC pullback for a wave 2. And this turn back up certainly opens the door to the bottom in place for that wave 2. Right now, it's only a micro 3 waves off the low, so what will be nice to see if this is the 1-2 is a potentially already complete with a 4th. I mean, it definitely reached low enough into a 3-2 to 50% retracement. But one more high would really be ideal. I mean, you technically can squeeze the 3, 4, and 5 in here if we do push a little bit lower. But this would just make it look even more solid.
I think if that's squeezed 5 up into it, then I posted a 15-minute chart earlier today where that could be 1-2 of an even bigger wave 1.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That heads all the way up to 10. Because the 618 on this of the bigger third is at 1021.
Right. So personally, I mean, if we got that one more higher high, it would just look even that much more convincing as 5 waves up, adding confidence to that bottom in place.
Right. DBX.
Has that pulled back? Oh yeah, I guess it has pulled back a little bit more.
I mean, I think it's probably just the A wave, but even if it is only the A wave, it did hit a 382 retrace. It's a pretty clear 3 waves down off the high, and a bounce should take it up towards 23, even if that's just a B wave.
Right. And especially if we got one more drop to this 50% as a 5th of C, I would be even more willing to count that as potentially all of wave 2.
Right.
Otherwise, yeah, I think just an A wave so far. Next up on DraftKings, the pullback didn't quite reach the ideal target for wave 4, but the manner in which we're reversing back up here, I think, certainly opens the door to that bottom in place, and now potentially starting a 5th higher. So if that's the case, let's see what we have as far as the structure here. I mean, this can potentially be 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5th up. So a nice clear corrective consolidation into 32.60 to 30.55, and I'll reattempt another setup to the long side there.
Disney, I think, is very similar to AXP, but it looks a little bit further ahead, similar to Uber, which we'll get to.
Yeah, we posted that back in the end of June that it was approaching support, that if the pullback was the 4th of the larger leading diagonal, that it should turn up from that blue box that you see on my chart, which it did do nicely, and like you said, has made a decent amount of progress off of that low. I would love to see it continue higher and fill out a 5th wave to give us a nice, clean, reliable 5 waves up off of the March low as the start to a larger 5th wave. Near term, though, it could consolidate a bit more in that wave B of 5 if it wants. And I would just watch the uptrend line here as support for that. Let's see what, probably around where the 618 is. Yeah, 113. Let's see, is Docs next. Next up on Docs, another leading diagonal up off of our March low, and so far a 382 retracement in the current pullback. Not much off of the current bounce, not much off of that 382 retracement so far, so need more evidence of a bottom in place, but just another situation where at least minimum expected downside for this pullback has been met.
The third on DBX, Alex, projects to, and I'm projecting this off of a little bit lower into the 18s if it gets a bigger BC. But from there, I have the 1382 at just shy of 38.
Which is very nice.
Yep.
Moving on to DVN, another energy name that gave us, I think, a decent 5-up off of the March low into the June high and has pulled back so far into a 382 retracement. So I posted this one, I think it was last week, that I was opening an initial tranche. No clear evidence yet that the bottom is in place for the wave 2. Another situation where it could just be an A wave, especially if we bounce higher in what looks like a corrective B. But any further downside into that blue box, just, again, opportunity to add more. EIDX is one that is still holding a potentially very bullish near-term setup, but I think we need to treat with a short leash, especially any break back below the June low, where that would invalidate the more recent one too. So bigger picture here, I mean, I like the 5-up into the 2019 high, the spike low in March that at least pulled back to a 382 retracement. It's a little bit messy in the move up since then, but it does count potentially as a 1-2-1-2 again, but has to hold that that low that was made in June. So you can use a tight stop here, either below that low or even below the more recent July 14th low, and that gives you a nice risk versus reward. But it's something that if we did get a nice drop in the market, I wouldn't be too surprised if it invalidates. So just
I think DY is kind of similar to that it has nice potential as a 1-2-1-2.
Yep. Yeah.
If it can't hold the 34 to 32 region, then there's a good chance that it's dropping down into the 25 to 23 region is that red 2.
What was I on? Oh, okay. FRGI. FRGI, one of the restaurant names, kind of similar to BJ, is BJRI.
You forgot EasyPW.
Do that one first. This is, are you counting as a 1-2-1-2? This is one I'm not following as closely, I don't think.
I have the red. Actually, I have it the red cam. I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt as 5-up, but as one of a larger intermediate wave one.
So from March to here, 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awkward 4, but I think it's only going to get a B wave and then come deeper, whether that was ABC up or not. But it did hit a 382 and turned up. Right. So can come up more towards 650 region, but certainly on the radar.
So FRGI, it has so far reached a 50% retracement following the potential leading diagonal off of the March low. Bounced so far, not clearly 5-up, so we would need more confirmation, but another situation where if it does prove itself more, this could have been all of a wave 2. KOD we've discussed before, which entered into the target support for the possible wave 2 pullback earlier this month. It still is kind of struggling to provide us with clear confirmation that we've completed the pullback, and actually kind of looks like it does want potentially one more drop down to the lower end of the 618 at 462 is if this is an A, B, and then C of this 5th wave. One to keep an eye on, though, that could easily be putting in a wave 2 bottom sooner than most other things. Next up on LBRT, another energy name that didn't quite hit the 382 retracement, but especially some of those other ones that did come down deeper, DVN, etc. If those were a complete wave 2, this could be a complete wave 2, just shy of the 382 retracement, and another local high here could also be considered a micro 5 waves up off of that low. So one to keep an eye on. But, as always, larger A wave, certainly reasonable as well. LTBR, not to be confused with LBRT. has the potential 5 up off of the April low in this case into the 302 extension as a possible wave 1 and has now pulled back into about a 50%. There's still no clear evidence of a bottom in place, so it does seem like this may end up drifting down to the lower end of target support at the 618, but it's still one to keep an eye on. If we get a strong pop one day, kind of similar to DGLY today, then we want to make sure we're watching it to look for an entry. Moving on to Mark, which I posted earlier this week that I took an initial entry when it tagged that 302 retracement. Following, I'm still viewing it as an A wave up. I mean, maybe it's more bullish as a wave 1 because it does look like 5 up, but for trading purposes, that doesn't make too substantial of a difference, and the percentage potential for a C wave is still very favorable. So, I mean, we're hitting the top end of support. It's just a tiny little pimple size bounce so far. Long way to go before confirming any sort of bottom in place for that B wave, but I did want to at least start building a position again with full anticipation that price can easily stretch lower and, based on the volatility of this name, get another 50% deeper. So you have to keep that in mind when you are deciding the position size for something like this. So we'll see how this develops. If we were to get a higher degree 5 up and then another 3 down, then I would be more than willing to view the B wave complete and add to the position then. Otherwise, I will do so at the 50 and then 618. Moving on to Momo, so another Chinese name that has gotten a decent pullback. So we had that a lot of really strong moves up last week. Was that last week or the week before? I think it was last week. And then the pullback since into this week into today, in a lot of cases, a potential low for some of these stocks. So even pre-market,
mentioned it a few times.
Hmm?
We might have mentioned it a few times today.
Oh, right. Pre-market, it hit 1849, that 618 retracement on the penny to move and has since turned up. Obviously not much off of the low so far today, so we do need more confirmation that it's put in the bottom as wave 2, but if we start to see that, then this looks like a really nice potential 1-2 to the upside.
MDT?
In which case, 2750 would be a minimum target. Sorry, what ticker?
MDT? Medtronic? No, MDT.
MDT.
Although that didn't look so bad.
So we did dip into the upper end of the target support here and what looks like, because of the move into the June high, looking like a corrective B wave. Excuse me, what can already be a corrective flat complete for this wave B. So the bounce is only 3 waves so far. I mean, that leaves us without clear confirmation of a bottom, but we'll see if it tries to develop 5 up as maybe a leading diagonal, or I would kind of doubt a 1-2-1-2, but that would be technically possible too. MRNA. So Zach and I differ a little bit here. I mean, it's not that I disagree with his count of a diagonal, but personally, I'm going to be following the standard impulse until it's proven wrong by breaking support. Just because price right now is playing very nice Fibonacci pinball with the high that we hit yesterday right into the 1-2-3-6 fib for a potential wave 3 of 3. So what I'm looking for is if this is an A, B, and we dip down to close to 75-ish, 75, 74 as a wave C, then I'm going to reload the shares that I trimmed yesterday to attempt to play for this wave 5 of 3. If it then breaks below 74, then I would move to either the diagonal count that Zach has suggested, or even I have this bearish alternative, since it is, just 3 waves up of equal proportion off the May low.
I'm still looking for a long from 76 to 72 region as the 4th wave of the diagonal, and then at least a move up towards 105 to 115 from there.
Oh, so it's pretty similar.
Yeah, I'd just be looking at that to be an ABC move up and possibly top the whole third.
Mm-hmm. Moving on, another cannabis name, which we've been watching because it came down into a 618 retracement of the potential wave one to the upside. It could, to be honest, look a little bit better so far off of the low. I mean, it got a nice initial pop, but has been moving sideways, consolidating sideways since. So we do need more confirmation that this is put in a bottom, giving us a large degree 5 up from that spike low that we saw so far for the month. And if we do see that, that should confirm the bottom in place in the 1-2 setup. Otherwise, I mean, this could get another drop to the 764, but at that point, it might look a little bit more like 5 down from the high. So really, for the best odds of this being bullish, I would like to see that July low hold. Where am I? Okay, PFE. PFE we were advertising when it was coming down into the 618 retracement as support, where price did put in the most recent bottom and turned up nicely from. The most bullish interpretation of this currently is a possible 1-2-1-2 start to an impulse to the upside, which would give price room for a little bit more of a near-term consolidation as wave 2 of 3. 34.86 down to 34.18 would be current support for that potential. If this turns out to be 3 waves off the low, then you would be looking at a larger diagonal, either leading or ending, off of the June bottom as the next bullish option. So we'll watch that upper support, and if that breaks, we'll move to the diagonal next. PLMR. PLMR so far is playing relatively good Fibonacci pinball off of the March low in a situation where price may have completed wave 3 of 3 at the recent high close to 1236 fib. If that's the case, then the target for fourth would be 7620 to 7070. So it would dip down into there, and especially nice turn back up in an impulsive fashion, and that would get me interested in trying to play for a fifth higher, which 2 ways of interpreting it. If it's a fifth higher, it could be as part of this wave 3. I have it labeled on that smaller degree chart just based on the fibs that it's down here. But if this is an A and a B rather than a C wave, then it doesn't have to quite stretch as high, but we'll watch initial target at 118.19.
What about Penn starting a fifth similar to DKNG?
Right, Penn under the most bullish interpretation as an impulse off of the March low, then the recent low here potentially completed a wave 4 of 3 and is now starting wave 5 of 3. This is only 3 waves up so far off the July low, so it's not completely out of the woods yet. But if it does start to break out, then that can lead to 64.40 next. Moving on to PLNT. We haven't quite reached a 302 retracement yet, and I do think that this will still get there, so I'm not in any rush to chase this, but it's one of the charts closer to potentially reaching initial support for all of a wave 2 pullback. So if we get another drop into 50.55 or anywhere close to there, I will likely open an initial tranche. Next up on Pulse. Hopefully, I mean, unfortunately possible, but hopefully this is still just a wider flat for the B wave, and I say that because I haven't been filled yet on my limit orders. But this is looking pretty solid as a 1-2-1-2 and very bullish high-level consolidation that's filled out so far. Again, I would really like, the structure supports it too, that this is an A and just a wider flat for the B, and we still get one more drop back down as wave C of 2 into at least the upper end of this blue box, and I would like to see that, of course, as I said, because I don't have a position yet. But this is definitely one that I'm keeping an eye on. Even if it does break out from here, I will look for an entry higher. So some of our aerospace stocks, GD, RTX, NOC, a lot of them got a decent sized pullback off of the June high and into initial support. The Most bullish interpretation here is the 1-2-1-2. Again, it's kind of a little awkward looking at the hourly chart here because of that split, but at least you can kind of see the lesser degree 1-2 in a little bit more detail. But that came down to a 618 retracement, and so far has turned up only a micro 3 wave so far. But if we get more confirmation, this could have, again, completed that 1-2-1-2 with the alternative if it drifts lower of the red 1-2 of a diagonal. Next up on SAIC, somebody asked for the target for a third on Pulse. Target would be 2118, 100% fib here. SAIC. Another one that I recently posted that I opened an initial trade in because it dipped into the upper end of support for a potential wave 2 already complete. And this one is more convincing as all of the wave 2 at the next bottom, wherever it does end up being, because the high that was made in June in this case really looks like a B wave, not any sort of extension of the wave 1. So we have a nice A, B, C expanded flat, which, again, could drift lower. We need more confirmation of a bottom in place. But further into the blue box, just more of an opportunity to add, in my opinion. Next up on SBLK, dipped into the upper end of support here, 382 retracement. It looks a little muted if this is the AB and then muted for the C wave, but minimum requirements have been met. Otherwise, especially if it bounces a bit more from here but still looks corrective, that could have just been wave A down. Work on more of the B wave, and then C takes us deeper into the box. But I would use that as an opportunity to add there as well. Next up on Sprouts, we've been tracking this one in some of our more recent Charts of the Day videos because of the near-term potential. This is a little bit different than the rest of the charts that we're looking at today because this is just a short-term trade. For the last potential extension to the upside, whereas a lot of these other are much more longer-term, swing-oriented, focused, building position for several months to even years out from here. Sprouts, what we're looking at for the micro setup is just a possible 1-2 start to the C wave because we held that 618 retracement for the B, and it bounced so far in what looks like a pretty nice 5 waves up from that low. So easily works as the wave 1 of C, room for a little bit more in a wave 2 of C, 2520, 2461, clear stop underneath the low that we made at the beginning of this week. Nice risk reward to play for a move towards 3020, which, is especially for the expected timing is still a respectable 20%. Next up on Sina, another Chinese name that has just been holding a very nice high-level consolidation after the strong gap up that we got earlier in the month. So, this is one of those, it wasn't an earnings gap, but I don't know if any of you are familiar with Trader Stewie on Twitter, but one of his favorite setups is what he calls a power earnings gap, which is a big gap up on strong volume that just holds a high-level consolidation after that. This would certainly fit that bill in what can be just a fourth wave consolidation within this wave 3, and set up continuation up to 4419 next in the fifth of that 3. So again, a lot of the Chinese names here are potentially setting up their next move higher. Shorter term trade oriented though in respect to those. SMG up next. Another stock that we were tracking as it came into that target support for a fourth wave. With that blue box there, it's turned up nicely from that support, even potentially with a 1-2 already in place to this initial start. If it starts to pull back more from here, unless this is a 1-2-1-2, which is kind of the most bullish interpretation, but if it really starts to drop a bit more, that could have been a slightly larger wave 1. I'm going to treat it as bullish above the low that was made at the end of June, and I would recommend maintaining a stop below there if you bought in that blue box.
Oh, we did sign up.
Yep. Sohu is another Chinese name that did pull back into initial target support for a fourth wave. It is starting to bounce, but so far looks like a micro 3 up. And personally, I would actually like to see the red path play out because it's ultimately more bullish. The blue path is just a corrective ABC to the upside. The red path is a larger leading diagonal. So if we drop down to $9 is the ideal target support for fourth, then price can turn back up from there in a fifth wave and head to 15. Next up on team, it is still pretty far from a 382 retracement, but this is one of the situations where if we got a quick spike down to retest the prior lows at around 160-ish and then reverse strongly from there, it would be enough for me to consider that as all of the expanded flat here complete. So it doesn't have to necessarily get as deep as the blue box. Therefore, worth, I think, just keeping a closer eye on. Moving on to Tyson, which took a long time to fill out this corrective flat off of the March high. It did dip into the upper end of support, the 382 retracement here, and has so far turned up, so it is possible that a bottom was struck. I would personally prefer another situation, mostly because I don't have a position yet, but personally prefer that we get one more drop here in a wave 5 of C, and deeper into the blue box, maybe to the 50% retracement at 53, and a really nice favorable entry if we see that, I think. Moving on to TW, strong, I think 5 up impulse, even in this case, not even a diagonal, off of the March low into the June high, and is starting to approach a 382 retracement, kind of similar to, say, PLNT. So it does have room for a little bit lower. No clear indication that a bottom is in place yet, but I will be entering the initial tranche, my first tranche here, if it gets anywhere close to 52.25. Next up is Twitter. So we're still kind of waiting for price to determine between our two potential counts here, and hopefully some of you were able to at least grab an initial position when it dipped below the 382 retracement at the end of June, and we were discussing how that could be even all of wave 2, if not just an A wave. So we got this strong move all the way back up to the prior high here. I mean, it's not the clearest impulse, but you could get 5 waves out of it. So it is possible that this is wave 1 of 3, and price is currently consolidating wave 2 of 3. So what I'd be watching for if this is an A, B, and we drop in a C and then start to turn back up, that would be, a strong indication that it's holding the red count. And so you might want to, especially if zero position, if you're not holding any sort of shares or any other position so far, and you're looking to get into this, and you drop down to, let's see what actual retracement levels are. Any drop, I mean, depending on how high this reaches, if it continues a little bit higher and then drops back down, it may only need to retest the 382, but any move down into the 50% here at 32.31, and you may want to consider position. That's also where the 50 and 200-day moving average are. The alternative is still reversing back down as the wider flat in blue. Next up on Uber, kind of similar to AXP and Disney, and Penn, where price completed a 4th wave into the recent June 27th low and turning back up in a 5th. Really, for odds to remain best in favor of that, I would prefer that the recent low that we got this week holds going forward to continue to see upside. So a situation where, if we do see a strong move down in the market, I wouldn't be too surprised if this ends up turning over and rolling back over and invalidating and seeing some sort of deeper decline from here. But as far as risk versus reward, whether you want to use the recent low this week or you want to use the June low for a stop, that still gives you a nice setup for a possible 5th higher. Moving on to another Chinese name here, WB, pulled back into what ideally is enough for a completed fourth wave. We can give it room for a little bit lower, but it did tag the 618 retracement exactly today and is turned back up. So another situation where we could have a nice short-term move to the upside as a fifth wave if it's able to move higher from here. XCUR, kind of similar to PLNT and TW. It is close to, but hasn't quite reached a 382 retracement of the 5 up off of the March low for wave 2, but one of the charts that looks a little bit closer than some others. So if we get one more drop down to 206, I'll be opening an initial tranche there. YY, another Chinese name, into support for a fourth wave. Didn't quite see as much of a rebound into the close as some of the other charts. So we'll watch closely if it starts to break down more than you want to just pick a stop that's comfortable for you. I would recommend probably no higher than the 50-day moving average here, just underneath there. For a tighter stop, if you want a slightly looser stop, I would recommend below 70. That still gives you nice risk reward here. XEL actually one of the stronger utility names, and we've kind of talked about how this is one of our favorite from that group. The 1212 potential here is definitely still holding. Now we only have 3 waves up off of the June low, so needs more confirmation. But as far as from that group, the chart that looks most convincing is 1212. This is up there as one of the better candidates. Technically, a wider flat is still possible, and it's kind of what XLE looks like it is filling out. Sorry, XLU. Although it didn't get that one more drop down, as is what looked like it could have been a fifth of C. It still technically could. I mean, we can move this fourth over. It hasn't invalidated that completely. We'll see whether or not we get one more drop. We did YYZO. Another chart very close to a 382 retracement, hasn't quite hit it, but certainly a candidate that looks closer to completing a wave 2 than a lot of other things. So I would love to see a little bit more downside, but if we touch the top end of that target box, another chart that I will open an initial position in. And finally, at least for my list, ZYME. We have a strong impulse off of the March low into the April high, what looks like a nice flat structure filling out since. It's already reached a 382 retracement in this case, but it doesn't quite look done to me. Really the most ideal kind of outcome here is going to be a fourth wave bounce within wave C, and then one more drop into the 50 to 618 here. But one that looks closer than some others. So that concludes the ones that I had on my list.
Oh, RGA I pointed out the other day, and didn't add it to the list, but I think it's in a larger primary 5 of a diagonal. But that part really doesn't matter. What I was harping on the other day was that very, very clear ABC retrace down to close to that 764 retrace level, which you're not getting. Usually a stronger 1-2 setup is going to hold that higher ideal fib zone, but a deeper retrace as a B wave often gives you a very, very good risk reward entry. So this looks pretty good off the low. It should try and get a little bit higher as wave 1 of that C wave up, and then hold a corrective retrace. But definitely looks like that recent 66, 67 low can be used as support now.
Right. And especially if it got 5 up, then it would really be screaming a nice long.
Right.
If you get another 4-5 here and then pull back in a wave 2.
Yep. So I trimmed a little bit today because I went in with spreads and they were up over 100%. So I cut half of them, and now I have a free trade. And if we get a nice finish off the 5 up and get a fade as that wave 2, then I'll add some of that back with a little bit longer term time horizon.
All right, let's jump into requests now. Starting with NUVA. Bigger picture here, I mean, it's really still kind of on the weekly chart, looks like a ABC up complete into that 2017 high. I know that since then we have just a 3-wave decline down, but it leaves us without anything clearly bullish, the higher degree or larger degree longer term. Move up off of that March low, a little awkward looking, a little muted in comparison to some other things, but you technically could get the leading diagonal here as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But this looks like an A, B, and then set up for a C wave. And there's a lot of charts that look like this, and kind of mentioned this at the beginning of the webinar. Just so many things look like an A into June, and then B wave since, and set up for a C down. And that's how I continue to view the broader market, the S&P right now. Moving on to MVIS. Had a target for a C wave bottom down there and has turned up strongly. So, I mean, we can consider this as a very large degree ABC down complete. From the low, ideally this is 5 up, just now trying to finish as a non-overlapping, actually a slight overlap, leading diagonal. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it looks good in that respect. If you got a nice pullback, corrective pullback, back to at least $1, then it would look pretty good to me. Moving on to ERI, personally, I would pick Penn over this. I think Penn's just a little bit cleaner looking. If this is a 4th, it almost kind of looks like it is trying to fill out as a triangle. Dips a little bit lower in an E wave of that triangle. Although I guess I could technically count a complete at that low right here. Nope, that has to be the C wave.
I'd be a little worried that that's the B wave triangle in a deeper 4.
Yep, and that is possible as well. So I think Penn's a little bit stronger and pretty similar looking chart otherwise. VII. Weird, I didn't get anything on the hourly. Bigger picture here, this could be a big A, B, and then now in a C wave, but there's no clear indication that the C wave has completed, and really the next bottom that is seen kind of looks like it'll just be wave 3 of C. Can't really, it has to be a diagonal because of all the overlap. So again, I mean, I see no evidence of a bottom, and I would be worried the next bounce is a 4th wave anyway. NVAX from the original shopping list, it has continued to power higher here, but it is very overbought. The fibs, technicals, and price structure all support a top approaching is what should be a 3rd wave. So if we get a nice correction as a 4th, then I'm interested again. Otherwise, I'm not buying up here.
I'm way more bullish than you on this. Not way more bullish. I think it's topping in only the 3 of 3.
Oh, that could be the case. Not too dissimilar.
No, I think it just extended that 3rd instead of it's a little bit awkward 3-4 otherwise.
I mean, from a fib perspective, it's actually pretty standard. I mean, 764 for the wave 1, 1382 for the 3 of 3, and then 1764 for the 5 of 3.
True.
MTD up next. Really sharp drop into the 618 retracement already. So it's one of the situations where if this is a 1-2 or any other kind of bullish interpretation, you've already filled out the majority of downside you want to see. So we'll see if it continues to prove itself off of this recent low. Right now, it's kind of questionable. I mean, it looked like an initial 5-wave start, but it's been floundering a little bit since then. So
it's like love. I mean, love is the same way, and we would love to see both of love. We would love to see both of them hold as the wave 2 because they did hit that 618, which is ideal. But it is a little bit concerning that they got such deeper retraces already, and a lot of things are just now starting to pull back. So
I thought it only hit a 50. Yeah, it did.
Oh yeah, okay.
So I think Love does have. I mean, I'd be less worried about Love getting another C wave down than I would AMTD, basically. So if this is a B wave flat and we get a C wave down to the 618, not as big of an issue here. NFE, this was from the list. I never took a position because it never hit the blue box, and it really looked like this was going to be a B, and then we were going to get even deeper than the 382 retracement for the C. Obviously, this turn back up opens door to the wave 2 complete already.
And it passed the 618 also, so I mean, it's right at the 618, so this could still be just wave 1 of the 3rd.
Yeah, that would actually be kind of the most bullish thing that it could do right now, since it is touching the 618 extension is turned down, and a consolidation is wave 2 of 3. Otherwise, you're potentially extending up to 100% at 24 at 25, and then that either has to be a C wave up or wave 3 of 3. So yeah, I would definitely be interested if we got a wave 2 from here. Be another opportunity to try this one again.
All right, no more requests, guys, or we're never going to be able to get through them. We're going to have to cut it off in the thread in the go-to box.
AAXN. Maybe that was the 4th, and this is an ugly diagonal for the 5th. Not really seeing anything clearly more bullish at the moment.
Yeah, I'm worried about a much larger degree top, unless, I mean, I could force a 1-2-1 into this high or into the last high and something much more in that red count, but it would still need to pull back to like 27 to have any confidence in that.
Oh, if this was wave 1 of 3, yeah. Still to wave 2 of 3. Triple M, actually, holding up a little bit better than I was expecting, following again what looked like a 3-wave move into that June high. So I still think there is potential here, longer term, for this to be bullish and another primary wave 4 complete into March. It was deeper than ideal, but still valid. But likely dealing with a diagonal off of that low, and there is no reason yet to assume this is not an A, B, and we're going to get another drop as a C into 146 to 133. Mining, okay. RYA. Oh, is there just an RYA? That might be the actual Ryanair. It is a British company, right? I think so. I'm going to assume that this is what he was asking for. Ryanair invalidated the 1-2 in blue there. That leaves us with the alternative option of a water flat for the wave 4. Move some of these labels over. I would say, I mean, compared to, say, United, this is a better looking airline chart. Some of the other ones like Airbus and can't remember what is the airline starts with an L?
LUV?
Not the ticker. The name.
Oh, I don't know. Lufthansa?
Yes, thank you. That chart looks good too, I think. The issue though is it's another situation where we have three waves up off of the March low. So I mean we can kind of truncate at bottom here, and maybe this is the wave one, but it kind of looks like an A, B, C needed still. It's just not clearly set up in the start to the fifth yet, especially if price is below the June high. So there's potential there, just not, again, the clearest off of the low yet. Moving on to gravity. I would have read it as gravy, but it looks like an ABC up potentially completes. If you're going to ignore the price history prior to this 2016 low, then you can get a kind of an awkward one and then running wave two.
Yeah, it just does not have a lot of clarity for me.
Well, I'll put it this way. If we get a bullback with the rest of the market and it looks like a nice ABC into the 382 to 618 and starts to turn up impulsively, then I would say you could take a position and see where it goes. Because if it breaks back below that low, you can always stop out. And, if it proves itself as being extremely bullish, as the red count would be, then there you go. Do you want to just do the first request from each person?
Yeah, I think that's a good plan.
I mean, that's how it should be anyway, since you only get one request in the using the actual queue.
Did we do ATHM?
No.
I think we missed that. So that's a good one to do.
First request is AMD. I unfortunately still kind of lack some confidence or clarity on this chart. I don't have a lot of conviction in the price structure. There's two options on my chart. Both are ultimately bullish. The blue, obviously, less longer term bullish, which would allow for more of a drop from here as a wider flat to finish that wave four, revisit the March low potentially. The most bullish interpretation is red as a series of ones and twos to the upside, but I just can't place a lot of faith behind that. And even under that potential, I would prefer at least a wider flat, because you don't have 5 up into this high. You have to use kind of a truncated fifth here to get 5 up as an LD, and then ideally an A, B, and then set up for a C wave of at least a wider flat there.
Yeah.
So I just, again, not really confident there. ATHM, it did what it needed to open the door, keep the door open to the more bullish interpretation, which is the blue count as a 1-2-1-2. This could even be another wave one, because it just looks like with the higher high here, this can be another 5 up. So this could even be wave 1 of 3. Proportions are a little bit off, but it is valid interpretation. Alternative still being that this is going to fill out a wider flat off of the June high. This was a B wave. We come back down in wave C of that wider flat. So I like the chart overall still. I mean, especially if you're more longer term oriented and you took the position when we were first looking at it back near the beginning of June. Actually, I think it was a little bit later than that. It was when we were pulling back, I think, in this move, yeah. So it was a little bit later in June. But if you've already started a position here, I think you're fine with just adding if we get the wider flat in red. The bigger picture count here still looks good. What I really like is this A, B, C flat structure from 2018. And we'll look at Palladium. Palladium, especially when I was looking at the other feed, almost could be a triangle for the B wave here forming. where this is an A, B, C, D, we fade again in an E wave before turning back up again. It's just otherwise not the clearest start yet to this wave C of A. But again, a triangle is something to watch out for. Next up on GNCA. Haven't looked at this recently, but it came into support for possible wave 2. And you do have this larger ABC Cowabunga post-IPO potentially complete. Until we see 5 up, though, I would be a little concerned that this is a 1, 2, 3, 4 with room for a little bit higher of the C, and you get one more drop as a 5th. And it did come just slightly shy of that 618, but risk reward here, using a stop either underneath the 786 or underneath the spike low here is pretty favorable, actually. FXI, PGen. PGen, most bullish interpretation is the series of 1s and 2s in blue, but price would need to turn up impulsively from here, give us 5 waves off the recent low to begin confirming that. The alternative, if we fail to hold 394, is the larger 1, 2 in red there of what will be a bigger diagonal up instead.
I was looking at it as the B wave of a diagonal.
Oh, yep, that would work too.
So a little bit further ahead, but yeah. And I actually am starting to lean a little bit more towards that. Especially if it drops down to 340s.
Right.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think we can still give any sort of bullish outcome, regardless of what it is, the benefit of the doubt. It's just not clearly impulsive.
Right.
It had that really nice 1-2-1-2 potential, but it's kind of deviated from really the start of a third wave. FXI, I track the Shanghai Composite in my World Market Service. This looks a little different than that. The actual SSEC saw a much stronger heart of a third and could be pulling back in a wave 4 of 3. This is closer to overlap. But at the same time, I think yesterday closed right at support for that 4th, so tonight's session might be, or today's session, I should say, should be interesting. Next up on ZIOP, I mean, there's some bullish potential here because it did technically hold that 1-2 very, very deep wave 2, but remains valid. And you can get a leading diagonal up off of that low, stretched a little bit higher to the more recent top there. But if an LD complete, you're still looking at more of a corrective pullback to 285 to 239.
Yeah, I think 261 to 239 is a little bit more ideal, especially, the general expectation that we have after leading diagonals, and most of the things off the low count well as leading diagonals, is either a wide retrace into the normal fib region or a deeper retrace or some combination of both. So a lot of things, that's why for me on a lot of things that have only gotten to a 382, I'm taking initial positioning because that's how we deal with our risk management. But I'm putting that bigger B wave bounce and then as a wider flat on a lot of those charts because they do count best as leading diagonals.
Yep. All right, on to Roku next. I'm operating under the assumption that our B wave completed for the time being at the June low. I mean, technically some sort of expanded flat could still be possible. But even if we have started the C wave, it looks like an ABC up more than it does like 5 waves from that June low. So it kind of suggests an ending diagonal for the C where we completed wave 1 and nice A, B, and then C down into at least 137, even better, closer to 129 to 121. Next opportunity to add down there, and that's the 618 is where the 200-day and 50-day are right now. SQ. Very extended move to the upside. Personally, not interested in buying at these levels, but if we got some semblance of a fourth wave, then I would reconsider. It doesn't clearly look set up to drop lower from here, though, if interested in a short setup. I mean, technically, you could view this as 5 up and an ABC flat, so there's just not an immediate clear setup to drop lower.
I'd even give this a wave 1 up off the March low, but it still needs to come back under 78.50.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if we got a actual wave 2 size drop, then sure, but
right.
Not going to hold my breath for that. ENBL, so we were looking at a lot of the MLPs a few weeks ago. Actually, a good time to revisit some of them. So if any of you want to use your requests to ask us to update some of those charts, and I'll try to actively look at some tomorrow. But a lot of them are beginning to approach these initial support, the 382 retracement that we had discussed as ideal to pull back into as a wave 2 or a B wave. So, and it's the case for a lot of energy stocks. They're starting to get into more favorable levels again on the long side. So it has room for lower, and ideally does stretch a little bit lower, but good to keep an eye on some of these. We didn't do Marriott yet, did we? So this is kind of similar to Disney, to AXP, Penn. We looked at another one that was like it. Pulled back into support for potential fourth of a larger leading diagonal off of the March low, and so far has turned up. So good risk versus reward in that respect, especially if you can use a tight stop below 85.50, the recent lows here. See if it can continue to fill out more of a fifth wave. Otherwise, the bearish alternative is that this is an A wave or wave 1, or bouncing into B or 2, and at least followed by C. Next up on ET. Is this an MLP as well?
I think so. It's a pipeline company at least.
So we, in this case, have actually come closer to the 50% retracement already. Kind of a weak bounce so far, so I wouldn't be surprised if it does get one more drop and at least retests that 50% retracement, or maybe even stretches to the 618. But it's in the zone, worth keeping an eye on at least.
And if the 5s or the 6 region where it hit was all of the wave 2, the third projects to 2245. So
not bad.
Nice return on
that. So we went over mRNA already, and I think we did enough detail on the micro for expectations there. When I'm a little concerned that you opened an option expiring on Friday for this, with our expectation that it's going to take, a long time to fill out. So, again, this is not a short term. I mean, it's short term, but it's not a couple days worth of trade. So just keep that in mind when you're positioning with options. But for Win, I mean, we got exactly what we were discussing last week for the ideal short setup. We were talking about how a bigger ABC up off of the recent low could be seen. We got it right into a 50% retracement. Even when we were looking at it previously this week, we talked about this should be wave 3 of C and get another 4 or 5, and we got that. So if you took the short entry yesterday, then, I mean, it could still drift a little bit higher, closer to the 618, but this is the ideal spot to roll over from. Start to see wave down.
I mean, if you're thinking of trading options tomorrow on it, I don't know, maybe if it does start to let go, then and you'd like to sell options that are expiring that day because they can very quickly go from having some value to having no value very, very fast. But just as quickly they can run against you. You know, I do have a buddy that, you know, would look at a chart like this and maybe start selling, you know, the 89 calls, you know, that expire tomorrow, you know, right at the open if it started to look like it was rolling, and just cash out on those. But there's a tremendous amount of risk involved with trading that way.
NEPT, so this, yes, is one of the cannabis names that we do like, along with GWPH, and both are stronger charts currently. Make no mistake about that. We do like these charts, but we ideally will still get more of a wave 2 here. It's difficult to rely on where that A wave is placed being all of a wave 2, and this does look like a B wave, and we should get a C wave of a Y or flat. So any C wave back down, even if it comes up shy of that 382, and then this will be a lot more attractive. But I do still hold my core position. PLSC, never mind, we did that. SNAP, so we actually, wasn't quite a 100% extension. We're getting high enough now that this could be the wave 3 of 3, counting the primary wave 2 bottom in March. So another situation where kind of a wave 4 pullback, which in either case, whatever degree you want to call it, should reach a little bit lower here. If this degree wave 4, you're looking back at 19 is possible. So we'll keep an eye on it, but it should get at least, down to the lower 20s again. 19 would really be nice to see. And then I think we could jump in there. DocuSign, way overbought for my taste. Even in an interpretation where this is, if you ignore this, just counting from here as some sort of 1-2, you came close to 1618 as possible third, at the very least coming back to 140 as a fourth. It's just not something I would buy up here. I mean, if you're looking at it as a short setup, though, allow for wider flat here, but otherwise, not the worst. This is an A, B, C. Could come up into the 50 or 618 and then turn down.
Mime, we actually had a thread about it earlier today with some good YouTube links. You guys can check that out.
IR, I like it. I thought this was part of the, yeah, it was part of the list. Okay. Nice LD off the low. One of the charts that looks like a good A wave down and then a B wave bounce. Again, there's a lot of these, and this is why I've felt comfortable sticking to my guns that this is a B wave bounce off the June low and the SPX as well. There's just way too many charts that look like this for me,
or at least just a nominal extension of wave 1 and about ready to still head down in more of the wave 2. But yeah.
So we get to see wave down to what should be closer to the 50% retracement in this case. That looks pretty good to me. Kroger has been very choppy. I'm still holding the position. Purchased back at the beginning of April. It's kind of just a set and forget sort of thing for me. Not really trying to navigate the subwaves very closely. I think it's going to continue to kind of chop higher in this diagonal. I know Zach has some concern, and I mean, I think it's reasonable to consider that B wave as well, but especially as long as we're holding above the recent low, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, the June low here.
I mean, in the wider flat for the B wave, it could easily get a fifth of C towards the 37, 38 region. So I definitely don't see it as a short setup right here. It's just one of those charts that I look at in that ABC up as a bigger B wave off 2017 just jumps out at me.
Yeah, as far as opening a new position here, it's not really in a spot where I would normally do so. But, for example, back here, it looked like a good place to take a stab.
Yeah. Janton, we do, this is in Stockwaves, we really avoid looking at the broad SPX, other than sometimes we'll do that at the beginning of some webinars when we're talking about overall context. I think from most of the charts that we've looked at, you can see that, for most things, we're looking at more of a wave 2 retrace, and we think that that's going to be reflected in the S&P. But our regular posts on wave counts and those are in the markets section of the site.
Right, and we do pretty frequently do a sector overview. We'll probably do for one soon. If we don't have a good topic next week, we'll do one.
Right.
But we otherwise post the sectors, not necessarily all at once, but you can find an updated chart on each one pretty easily through search. Moving on, PACE. I personally still lean toward the wider flat. I mean, a lot of these charts I'm not super confident we will get the wider flat, but it just in this case really would look best to drop back down, give us wider flat for the P4.
I think either way, that's probably maybe counts better as a WXY. I think if it faded from the 300 region, it could have been 3 up into about 290s, 300. But stretching higher the way it did now looks more like that B wave again.
Mm-hmm. And even if more bullish, I mean, I could move the primary 3 over here and count this as an expanded flat like some charts have, and then wave 1 of what will be an ending diagonal. You're still looking, I think, at more of a wave 2 back to 255 to 215.
I'm keeping an eye on ZG, Z, and Redfin all together. I think they have very similar longer term and shorter term setups, and a lot of them definitely look like they're due for more of the wave 2 retrace. I think I haven't looked at Z recently, but RDFN, REDFN? No,
RDFN's right, I think.
Yeah, RDFN really does look like it started that move off the high. It has a nice initial weakness and a corrective bounce. So I do think that that's only the A-B setup inside the A of wave 2, but really nice setup for more of a drop to come out.
Yeah, these ones really would like to see a nice pullback too, and then I think they would be nice long entries.
Yep.
And I'll do OKTA to round it off. Larger diagonal is how I'm counting this. It looks pretty full in this structure up off of the March low is 5 waves, so I think it's putting it atop to that A wave, and we'll pull back in wave B, and we maybe even can give it a little bit more generous target there for the C with how high the A wave reached. But a nice pullback as the B is what I would need to be interested here. And it technically, based on how high it reached, could have been all of the 5th. It just looks like 5 up. All right. So again, we did skip over some of them. You can, of course, request them later on the site, but we just had a lot to go through otherwise, so I wanted to end in a reasonable time. Hope you guys have a wonderful evening. See you again next time.
All right. Have a good night.